My name is Rodney Pyatt. I'm one half of the programming duo here at the Sarasota Film Festival, and it's my honor to invite to the stage someone that anyone who was there last night got to see her wonderful work, and she gave us the privilege of having a Q&A with her, Jena Malone. Whichever one you want.
How's it going? Got my Coca-Cola.
I know there was no prepared drink last night, so we've covered that base this time.
It's okay, I come prepared.
Thank you so much again for being here, and thank you for bringing this film. We talked a lot about it last night, how you kind of embrace the fear of digging into something a little different. I want to rewind a little bit and talk about what first got you into this industry and gave you the acting bug.
Oh gosh, yeah. So I was 10 years old when I knew I wanted to pursue it in a way that wasn't just like imaginative kiddo dream space. My mom, I grew up in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, actually. It's more state line Nevada. Lake Tahoe, Nevada doesn't exist. And my mom, I had two moms, and yeah, they were awesome. They worked 3 or 4 jobs, and my mom had a love of theater, and so she always did community theater growing up, and so I was always somewhere off stage, hiding under the piano, running around with the props and putting teeth on and, doing all the things you're not supposed to do. And I remember there was a moment when must have been my son's age, like 5 or 6, when I was underneath the piano and, my moms were working so many jobs. We were definitely riding that poverty line. I had never seen my mom really dress up before. I had never seen her in a space where she, in our society, looked really beautiful. I knew she was beautiful, but I had never seen that type of transformation. And she stepped out on stage. She was playing Rosie in Bye Bye Birdie, I think. And it was rehearsals, and it was the dress rehearsal, and she had red lipstick on and this beautiful red dress, and she came out, and I just remember being like, that's my mom. Like, that's so cool. I want to do that. I want to transform. I want to play. So I made a list. Of course, A-type personality. I made a list of 5 things I wanted to do when I was 6 years old, and it was act, sing, write, dance, and teach. And it was the first on the list, so I just thought I would start there.
So what was your first time checking off act off the list? Was it a theater production, a film?
Yeah, I was in the background a lot in community theater, like Fiddler on the Roof, townspeople, towns-children. But then my mom and I moved to Las Vegas, and I really didn't like it, coming from an alpine, beautiful mountain town to a desert. And I remember looking in the newspaper. It was a sort of a game that me and my mom played where I would help her find jobs, and I would learn reading, and I would find apartments for us. And I remember finding, when I was about 9, an acting seminar in the paper, and I circled it, and was like, I want to go to this for my 10th birthday, and it was like $25.
Okay.
And it was a big fraud, as we all know. There's a lot of, but it's okay. It's all entry points, right? So I went, and we ended up spending $200 on headshots and green acting classes, but he did. This gentleman, I forget his name, got me this audition in Los Angeles, and so we drove to Los Angeles, and it was for a student film called Sunday's Child, which was directed and written by Camille Landau, who was Martin Landau's granddaughter. And I got it, and it was a feature film, and I was the lead, and it was called Sunday's Child. And so I convinced my mom to move to Los Angeles. She was working temp jobs anyways, so there was ease in finding jobs wherever, which I think is really cool. And we lived in various motels and hotels and friends' bedrooms and all sort of strange things for the first 6 months. And then I just, from that job, I got an agent, or there was a manager on set. One of the other actors had a manager. It was like a kid's manager. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll sign you. And it just, we sort of sat down, me and my mom, and we're like, okay, let's just give it a year and see what happens, because this is fun. And also, it felt collaborative to be able to be supportive in the way of like, I can bring in money too. You know, I think that children have a great instinct to want to help. You know, they do lemonade stands and they build necklaces and they want to contribute to society in some way. And I think that what was really special about me starting like that was that I was given a voice. I was given an opportunity to feel empowered. I was given a space where I was working with a lot of adults who were looking towards me and asking me very thoughtful questions and empowering me to make choices. And it felt like a drug. I was like, yeah, I love this. Yeah, and so that's the story, and it just sort of spiraled from there, and we auditioned. I say we because obviously I couldn't drive.
Team
big
effort.
part of a child actor's life is their parents and their sacrifices and driving them around and getting them to school and this and that. And yeah, and then I ended up getting like a Michael Jackson video and another student film, and then I ended up doing a lot of auditions. And then it kind of got to a point where I was getting to read more scripts, which was really exciting. I think I was spoiled a little bit for my first job being a lead in a film, and it was important, and you know, it wasn't like a lighthearted affair. It was about a little girl who, Sunday's Child, had seen a milk carton box of a little girl who had been kidnapped or something, was missing. And she thought that that was really beautiful, that their parents missed her so much because she wasn't in a good family. And she dressed up like that little girl, knocked her tooth out, and like stood on the same corner waiting for someone to find her, which is pretty intense. But anyway, so it gave me sort of this blood in my mouth to want to pursue narrative. And so I was really focused on reading scripts and trying to find good work. And about 8 months in, I decided to not do commercial auditions anymore. At 10 years old, I was
Big
like,
decisions.
okay, honey. Like, I was so stubborn, I guess. I don't know. I just didn't like the environment of commercial auditions. I felt constantly belittled and never valued. I felt like I didn't like having to like be cutesy, you know? I thought that that was like something that should happen in another space. You know, I wanted to be serious, and I wanted to, yeah, I took it very seriously. And so I told my agent and manager at that time that I was not going to be pursuing commercial work anymore.
As a 10-year-old.
I mean, I had done like a Good Humor commercial and like this Japanese Milky Way commercial.
Okay.
And it was, you know, I mean, everyone's like, it's good money, you have to do this. And I was like, I don't want to. So I think that's when I realized that I wasn't going to be doing it in the way that everyone wanted me to be doing it. And it sort of also, I think, emboldened me because I didn't really care. I didn't care about doing it the way that other people told me I had to. And it's not that we didn't need the money, because obviously we were still riding that poverty line, and it was a wild experience of learning how to, you know, navigate that. But also a beautiful, you know, congratulations and gratitude to my mom to allow me the space to be empowered enough to have a voice and to make choices. And I don't think children get that space enough. So
It's so neat to hear how you didn't necessarily pursue that typical trajectory, maybe that's stereotypical of the showbiz kid. And from a young age, it seems that you pursued what you were looking to do, your own path, and you really valued your dignity. And you had examples of that, it seems like, in your mother and in your very first director. I think it's so unique that some of your first experiences were with female directors.
I know, it's so cool. It's so rare because that was just in the beginning, and now it's sort of like I have barely worked with any females because Angelica Houston was the first real, you know, big part I got, which was at the time for TNT. It was a made-for-television film, and Angelica Houston was making her directorial debut. It was adapted from a novel called Bastard Out of Carolina. And it was one of those things that we read about where the casting directors do like a wide search. You know, they were like looking at Kmart and gas stations and, you know, all of the places. And then, you know, I guess I walked in the room and put on this fake Southern accent, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, let's do this." So it was cool.
What was it like working with her and working with Jennifer Jason Leigh on that film at such a young age and at the beginning of your career trajectory?
I mean, I'm so appreciative of it. It's almost like, how do we have, when we look at landscapes and they're really spectacular, we have to think about the history of how those landscapes got there. And it was through, the Ice Age, or there was a crazy tornado at this time. And for some reason, I was given the gift of getting to work with very responsible, down-to-earth, full of dignity, female writers, directors, and actors that rubbed all of their energy and understanding off to me, and I got to look up to them and therefore emulate them, and it gave me a really wonderful entry point. So those were my points of references, which I'm in awe of, and then to go and work with Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon, I just felt like I was constantly given these, it's a hard thing to know, but yeah, just these embodiments of like people that were very responsible, very professional. They were not acting crazy on set. They were not showing up late. They talked to the crew. They were wonderful examples of what it is to be a human actor, not only a female actor. And now looking back, because now we live in a different time where we really get to look at a woman's journey and see how different it was for them at that time, and I have even a greater respect for them to have been able to hold their power in a world where they really didn't have much power. And so it was just, I think, beautiful luck that I was given that.
And in the role that you played in Angelica's film, it was another heavier film, like what you talked about in your first. It wasn't a typical precocious young child. What was it like exploring those themes at that age and in such a professional setting? What was that process like for you playing these roles that dealt with heavier issues like abuse?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, life doesn't stop, or, life... I'm a mom. I have a son who's 5, and it's a very beautiful and interesting learning experience about how to teach our children about the world, because the world never changes. It's always has these giant, caverns of depravity and gorgeous, breathtaking spaces of life and joy. And so getting to figure out, okay, I think he's ready for this, and I think he's ready for this. And for whatever reason, I think in the way that I was raised, my godmom had been abused as a child, and it was something I was aware of. I didn't really fully know, but I knew that it was something I wanted to protect her from, whatever that was, that there was something that had hurt her, and I didn't like that. And when I read the script, Bastard Out of Carolina, I just felt like it was deeply my responsibility to embody this, to be able to show what this was, and so we could sort of learn about it. And I don't know, it's hard to know exactly because I was 10, tiny. I mean, maybe I was just turning 11. But I felt a deep, protectiveness, that, I wanted to play this role, and I wanted to do it well. And there was a fierceness that I didn't fully maybe understand at that age. And I think it came from love, of, loving, knowing that I was given that information of some of the depravity of the world, and that the way my mind was transcending it was that of protection, education, and amplification. And so, yeah, I think it set me definitely also on a course of wanting to be a part of transformative storytelling.
It sounds like there was so much open communication with you as a child from your family and with the professionals that you started working with as you came into the business, and it seems like that's made such a world of difference for you, that open communication was there. As you continued in your career, you've worked with some very storied directors, and you mentioned working with Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon on Stepmom. What was it like working with Chris Columbus on that? He's very famous, of course, with the Harry Potter franchise, of working with kids. What was your experience of working with him like?
And I mean, I've told this story before, so it's not like a spill the tea kind of moment. But I loved him. I loved everything about him. He always made me feel it was a very fun set, an easy set. He was very protective. But I think because I was working with also a younger actor, I was 12 at the time. I turned 13 on the set. It was really fun.
Oh.
And Julia turned 30, and so we were both going through these milestone moments. But I think because Liam Aiken, who was maybe 7 at the time, I felt sort of lumped into the category of child actor at 7. And I remember telling Chris, I was like, you don't need to bribe me to do a good take. Like, I don't want that. I don't need a boom box to do another. I'm good. I just need you to give me some space and some time and let me play. And he was sort of like, okay. It's like, very, but I remember, feeling a little like I didn't love his directing style at the time. But he was a great person and it was super fun. But when we would get into the meat of the matter or the work of the matter, I was more used to directors treating me like an equal and treating me like, a human that had ideas, So it's funny. But I think that maybe I was rare in that, and that, bribery works. I mean, amen. So I understand it very well. My son is drinking a Coca-Cola right now, so. But yeah, it was interesting.
It sounds like you were in so much control of your own agency, even at that time, and able to articulate that to people you worked with. And it's fun hearing you talk about it in person, because having watched your career for the 27 years that it's gone on, you've played so many characters who are in utter control of their own agency and can speak up for themselves. And I'm thinking very much of your work in Saved, which is such a biting, sharp, fun film. What was it like to play that character, especially with your trajectory thus far? It seems like that character maybe shares some traits with you in being able to speak her mind and articulate her thoughts.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's a nice awareness about a human's own agency. And I don't know. For me, Saved felt like the most linear character I ever played. It was the first time I stepped into a leading role as a teenager. I guess I had done more leading roles as a child, which is hilarious. And I remember when I read the script, I was like, I don't want to play her. I felt her kind of a little bit too linear, and I wanted to play Hilary Faye, which was the Mandy Moore character. But I sat with Sandy Stern, the producer, and Brian Danley, and they sort of convinced me that, I think in my time working in things, I feel like sometimes the lead is given the least to do, because the whole thing has to rest on their shoulders. So they have to kind of carry the audience's journey, which can feel very like, now you have to just walk here, and now you have to go and do this thing, and now everyone else gets to have kind of wild arcs, and you have to kind of keep on the through line. And I think that's never been that exciting to me. So it's interesting you were saying how you felt like we were maybe similar, because I think I struggled to find similarities between us, but maybe I was also 17, 18, like I didn't know myself very well either.
There's some things that I think really show through in that performance, and it's so interesting to hear what it was like for you in that moment. That film has become such a cult favorite, and I think we can all remember Mandy Moore yelling how she's filled with the love of Christ.
I love it. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, and we knew when we were doing it, this is the moment. It's nice to see how it's lived on.
Yeah. But at that same time, you had another film that has really gone down as a cult favorite of doing Donnie Darko. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's so sweet to know. I mean, it's sort of like planting a seed in a garden and not really knowing which tomato breed is going to take, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wow, it's the purple tomato? I had no idea it was going to be the purple tomato who did so well in this area. Like, you read a script and it was really cool, but no one really understood it. I remember my agent being like, I don't know what this is, but just read it, and you can pass if you want to. And I was like, no, I love this. And I also didn't really understand it. I was 16 when I did it, and I was like, this is so sci-fi and like above my head. I want everything to do with this. I want these people to educate me. It was cool. It felt, and also in the opposite, it was the first time I had worked with a younger director. I remember when I walked into the audition for Donnie Darko. Normally you walk into an audition and there's like a casting director and an assistant, and then there's a director and maybe a producer. And typically the director and the producer are older white men, and the casting director is a woman, and the casting assistant is a young man or woman. That's pretty much all it's ever been, unfortunately. And I walked in, and I thought the director was the casting assistant because he's 23 years old, and he's like standing next to the camera. And and he's like, no, I'm the director. I'm Rich Kelly. And I was like, oh, sorry, wow, that is my complete conundrum of social bias, you know. But that was the coolest part, is I think because I had started young, and I felt that was such an empowering time to get to work with a young director that was finding his own empowerment and having people, you know, surrounding himself with people that were, you know, very much further in their career than he was, listening to him, being inspired by him. It felt like a really groundbreaking moment just for that. And if the film was bad, that's fine. We all had a great experience. And technically, it didn't do well, you know? I mean, it came out right around 9/11, and there was like kind of an airplane crash in the film, and it was completely buried, and no one wanted to watch it. The reviews were horrible. And but then people saw it, you know, and the birth of the internet, and the things spread, and now it gets shown, you know, at midnight in New York, you know, every other Friday, and it's really cool that it gets to have a life. You just don't know, you know, you plant a lot of seeds, and you just don't know what's gonna stick.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you got to work with someone who was, with you being 16 and him being 23 at the time, almost a peer relationship, closer in age to maybe what you'd had beforehand. Did you feel that it was an especially collaborative set, maybe because, you know, you and Jake and the director being in that same general sphere of ages?
It did feel collaborative. It felt like maybe it was the first time I worked with a real auteur. It's different working with a director that has such a distinct vision that he's sort of like, I'm going to need you to stand right there, and then it's going to be this angle and this shot. And then, you know, I felt previously that I had worked with kind of more like directors that were sort of like, okay, let's discover the scene. We don't know where the camera's going to go. We're going to just see what this is. Or maybe they'll have one or two shots that they've planned out, but every shot was planned out on that film, and we were stepping into his storyboards. So that felt like a different process for me, which felt maybe less collaborative, but more, you have to trust, you know? So it's a really beautiful trust exercise to sort of offer up anything that you could do in that sort of finite space. But it's cool. I love working with the tours. It feels nice for people to have very clear, not only emotional visions, but technical visions, because that's a really important part of filmmaking.
Hearing you talk about that makes me think of something you did that was kind of a first for you when you did voice work on Miyazaki's film Howl's Moving Castle. And so it was such a technical thing that you experienced working on Donnie Darko. What was it like doing voice work for the first time?
Well, Miyazaki was one of my favorites, and I wrote him a letter that he never got, but then the American agency that does the American voices for the Japanese films received, and they were like, oh, this is so sweet, thank you, would you like to do a role in this thing? And I was like, yes, I'm so excited. I got to go down to, like, they recorded it somewhere down in Disneyland near there. It was cool. I'm not the best voice actor, I realize. You know, it's really hard. It's a whole different, it's just a different muscle, you know? I remember doing it and realizing, oh my God, that was really bad. Like, I was like, that was not good. I did not do a good job. But yeah, I mean, a gift to be given that opportunity, you know?
It's funny hearing you call yourself not a good voice actor, especially because I know you also do so much work singing that you've done on not only songs for films, but in your own musical endeavors. What was it, especially thinking of that list you referenced at the beginning of our talk, what was it like for you to branch out into the musical world?
Um, I don't know. I think that I sort of invented my own motto when I was tiny, in this industry, that the most important work was the work that I wasn't going to get paid for, because it felt like, yes, you go and do your work and you act for what, like 12 hours in, a month. It's not a lot of work that you're doing. The actual, action and cut, And so I was just like, whoa, how else am I going to get what I want to do out? And so I feel like pushing into being a storyteller has always been very important to me. And when I was one of the most important characters on set for me, or the most mythical, was the cinematographer. So, of course, the director is the one that everyone talks to, and it's their vision, but the cinematographer, classically, when we were shooting more with Panavision and film, and they have all of these, like shaman lenses around their thing, and they look like these like powerful, mysterious figures, and they're the ones moving the lights, and they handle the whole crew, and they have the smoke machines, and they have all of the things. I mean, it feels like they have this incredible, power on set. And that relationship of awe became wanting to become a photographer. And so I started investigating my own relationship to storytelling visually. And that moved to creating videos, which then as soon as I got into doing videos, I realized that sound was the biggest component to making narratives that moved. And then it turned into song making. And so I remember I was doing this film, Four Last Songs, in Majorca with Stanley Tucci and Risa Fons. It was a horrible experience. We hated it. And so I had a lot of free time to like figure other things out. And I was on GarageBand all the time. And I was just making videos and trying to figure out how to make cool like audio components. And I started singing and recording some of the actors singing. I remember asking Risa Fons to come in. I'm like, okay, I need a melancholy whistle. And he's like, what even is that? Like, how can I even do that? And I have all these like Welsh folk songs that he wanted to record for me. And so I kind of got the bug of just, storytelling and sound, and it never stopped. And so from there, it was like I just started freestyling all the time and learning how to be a producer and learning how to make music. And I made 2 albums in like a year and self-released them, and then formed a band, and we made another 2 albums. And it's just been a really fun experimental place for storytelling or narrative work,
As you've talked about working with so many people and picking brains of the cinematographers you've worked with and the sound engineers that you've worked with, what was some of the best advice you got to kind of contribute towards your own journey of storytelling?
I don't know. I think I'm still waiting for that piece of advice. I feel like maybe the downfall of being so deeply empowered as a child, I think I have an intimidation factor of looking like I know what I'm doing. So people tend to like leave me alone a little bit. That I don't know. I don't think many people have given me much advice with the sound narrative stuff yet, but if you guys have any, I'm open. I'm far more receptive now that I'm a mother.
A film that you did that had a lot of technical elements, and speaking of auteurs came from one, was when you worked on Pride and Prejudice with Joe Wright, and of course that has such luscious cinematography and beautiful music to it, and it's very much an ensemble piece. What was it like being a part of a film that was so technical in the regards that it was, with such a large cast? So I can't imagine that it was a very freewheeling set experience.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Wright's another auteur. He has a vision. He wants, and he sort of already has the film in his mind before you're doing it. So he's casting people to be a part of his vision. But he's also very collaborative and easy and fun. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I remember about that film was just being on a set full of women. That just felt so different. It was always, it's okay. Take your time. I know. There we go. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good. Yeah, the whole cast was female, basically. I mean, and then there was Donald Sutherland, who's sort of an honorary woman at that point. Um, yeah, it felt really special. I think that, constantly you're put in an environment where you're the only woman in the room my whole life. And, there was a lot of female energy and hair and makeup trailers and wardrobe trailers, but when you're on set, it was a very deeply masculine experience, which I think also rubs off on how you conduct yourself, and that it felt like I got to access different parts of myself as an actor because there was more of a feminine energy, which felt softer and more collaborative and inclusive and supportive. So that, I think, was my favorite part of that.
Speaking of being on a set with a lot of feminine energy, but getting to maybe access some masculine parts of yourself, I have to ask, what was it like being a part of Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch?
Amazing. See, you don't even need the cue cards. He's doing so great, you guys. He's jumping from all of the points. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that as I was, we're like reading my mind. It's so funny. Zack Snyder's film was incredible. I'm still like best friends with all of those girls. We were I think anytime you go to the proverbial trenches with people.
And that film had literal trenches.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's both. It bonds you. Like, it just deeply bonds you. And Zack is another person where, he empowered me in a way that I had never allowed myself to be empowered. I was always a tiny little, whatever girl, woman, never been to the gym before, never played sports, but was sort of a tomboy, rough and tumble. I know that's sort of a canceled word, but I was definitely wanting to explore more of my masculinity. That's where I felt more safe, because I didn't really understand femininity at that age. I was always just like, oh, I don't know, it's too pressured. And yeah, for him to be like, no, you can do this. Like, handle this weapon, clear this room, slay that dragon. I was like, okay. And we had a really intensive training process on that. So it was 3 months of working with 2 Navy SEALs for 2 hours every morning, and then a break, and then 5 to 6 hours working with 13 to 14 different martial artists. And then going back to the Navy SEALs and learning all of our assault weapon, I don't even know what the word is, handling guns and maneuvers and how to clear rooms and how to look like we knew what we were doing. And it was incredible. It was like 10-hour days, 5 days a week for 3 months where we did that. And I remember thinking that my pain threshold, just in my own feminine experience, was like here. I was like, no, this is what I can do. And realizing that through that discipline of the mind and the mind-body conundrum of growth and strength, my real pain threshold is like all the way to that window, and I was just like amazed that I could push myself that far. And I don't think I ever would have done that previously, because I think I had my own social sort of indoctrinated biases against working out, meathead culture, all of those horrible things that, like, in my mind, I was sort of programmed to think was bad or weird or inaccessible. And it's actually highly disciplined. It's highly meditative. It's deeply spiritual. Learning how to move your body, learning the threshold of your body, learning pushing your body into places that are uncomfortable, And I had always wanted to go to those like uncomfortable places emotionally, but had sort of forgotten about the physical side. And so in a very strange way, because Zack Snyder is not that type of filmmaker, but he pushed me to become a better character actor, because it was the first time that a filmmaker had asked me to step into my body in a way that I had never done. And it changed me as an actor,
It sounds like it was so healing to be given the space to realize that your body could be a tool in your performances.
So cool. I mean, we all need that. We deserve that. It should be incentivized. It's a really important. It's what we have. It is our tool. It is our instrument. But I think that's also because I'm untrained as an actor, and I now have talked to other actors who were trained, and they're like, honey, that's like day one. They're like, they tell you to get into your body. And I was like, oh, okay. I see. I missed that class.
So I don't know how much you're allowed to share about it, but I know you're working with Zack again on a new film. What has that been like in terms of accessing yourself physically and then reuniting with someone who you had such a great experience with?
I mean, I love working with Zach. I love getting that phone call where he's like, I got a little something you want to do. And I'm like, oh, yes. And it's great. I mean, coming out of this pandemic and I'm now working out again and getting back into that sort of training mentality. And it's amazing because we've all been in moderate forms of survival mode. And it's nice to get back into a healthy, empowered, body understanding. It's an amazing cast, and I get to do something I've never done before, which is really, really, really exciting. So we'll see.
That's awesome. And I know it's part of a legacy of films that you've kind of been a part of, because not only have you done work with Zach in these giant action tentpoles, but a role that you carried through multiple films was in the Hunger Games series.
Right.
And that was such an ensemble experience. What was it like working on such a huge scale? I would think equal only to the scale that you've worked at with Zack Snyder previously.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, for me, it was mostly, the scale was more that we did 3 films back to back. Well, really 4, because the third was 2.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting experience where you're sort of carrying a character for like 2.5 years. You're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to set this down. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because when I did Sucker Punch, there was so much attention, detail, money, and care put towards my physicality and training and stunts. And with Hunger Games, it was not like that. They had some stunts, but it just wasn't a forethought. I remember being like, am I going to have to hire my own personal trainer? Like, what's going on? Like, I need to get into, she's a warrior, and sort of having to fight for that. But it was cool because I feel like Zach had empowered me to know that I deserved to ask for that. Whereas I think before I would have just been like, okay, well, I guess I'll just try this stunt and have no understanding of, or strength or ability to do that for 12 hours a day. So for me, it was less the stunt and the fighting and that world, but more getting to live with this character for 2.5 years. That was what felt really spectacular. Because then, in 2.5 years, think about all of the aha moments you get, like those bathtub moments when you're not thinking about it and it just comes to you, which are harder to reach for when you're on set 12 hours a day, every day. It gave me opportunities to really daydream about a character and let her come to me in different ways, which felt exciting.
Hearing you talk about getting to live with a character for a while is so interesting, especially a character that you got to create. Of course, she existed on the page, but you got to imbue her with yourself over a period of time. And it makes me very curious about the films, much like Porcupine, that you've done, that are based on true people. And I know you worked with Sean Penn on Into the Wild and A True Story. And what's that like at that level, portraying a person who did live and breathe? And how do you get into that mindset, and how is it different from a character that you're creating collaboratively with the script?
Yeah, gosh, it's a good question. I mean, they feel so similar. When we read novels, the characters are so real to us. A similar thing happens when you read a good script, is the characters are so real, and the parameters of the script are still the reality of that character. And so there is always something finite that you have to kind of push against. You're not just creating out of the air, But particularly with Into the Wild, I mean, I was able to talk to the sister that I was portraying, and she was a big part of the film and the experience, which was so supportive. But also, I think because I was portraying her younger and not who she was when we shot it, it felt like I had a tiny bit of leeway to kind of move and breathe in it. But to have access to a physical body with memories and, all of those things is the ultimate resource, right? But that ultimate resource can also be meticulized through a novel if the author is an incredible one, because you can still be given that level of meticulation through a fiction piece, I think.
Yeah, and I think you've certainly made so many characters over the year come to life regardless of their origins or not. Did you have the opportunity to meet the real-life Jena that you portrayed in Porcupine?
You know, Mike never really told me it was based on a real character. Yeah. I mean, he did a little bit, and then I was like, did you really tell me that, or were we just drinking too much wine? Because then he never brought it up, and he never let me meet her. And I was just like, I don't really know if this is true. And then it's like, and then he keeps bringing it up in press things, and I'm like, I don't like that you've hidden this person and that she's actually kind of my name. Like, I don't, this is awkward.
You didn't know the title.
I
There was a
still
lot of
haven't met her.
secretism.
I mean, it's a real weird thing. I feel like it was like I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit mad at him about it, because that's not fair to me. Like, I feel like, give me full access, honey. Like, that's my job. Like, don't keep me in the closet. I'm not that time of actor. Like, you can invite me into the journey. But that's his choice. Amen. No big deal. But I don't know. I don't even know who she is. I have no idea. So I didn't base it off her. That's for sure.
It was so thrilling having you there last night, and I know you've come to SFF before. It's actually your third time here
I know,
with
it's
us.
exciting. Yeah, and I get to bring my son. It's so cool.
We just got to keep bringing you back.
Yoo-hoo!
Some of the other films that you've come with have been films that I know when I think of you and your career, my mind immediately goes to them. I know the first time you came to us, you were with Oren Moverman, and you brought The Messenger. What was it like working with Oren? I know he is such a writer, talking about writers, and that was his directorial debut. What was that experience like?
I love Oren. I loved the experience. It was a bit of a boys' club entering it. And so I had my own experience with that element of it. But I love the way Oren writes. I love the way he embodies. I love the way he directs. I'm always looking forward to new stories that come out of, that man's head. But yeah, that was a little bit of a harder one for me.
When he made the film The Dinner, I know that you contributed to that soundtrack. What was that collaboration like, working with someone who you'd worked with in an acting sense and then collaborating musically with Oren?
Well, anytime anyone calls me and they're like, we'd like to put a song in our movie, I'm still like, I feel like a 4-year-old where I'm like, really? This is something I made and you want it? Like, it feels like I still don't think I'm a good musician, or, I do it for not that, but then it's cool if people are like, yeah, that's cool. It was a freestyle that I had done whenever, however, was just recorded, and I had played it for him once, and he was like, I want that in the thing, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, like, you can have it. And then they're like, no, we're gonna pay you for it. I was like, oh, great, even that's so sweet. Like, a real licensing job. This is a real, put it on my resume.
And the other film that you came with a few years back was In Our Nature, and that was such a beautiful, talk about an actor's film. The four of you just breathed so much life into that. What was that experience like?
With John Slattery and Gabrielle Union, it was really cool. We shot it in the Catskills, and it felt like a play. It was 4 actors, kind of a 4-hander, that we say. It felt like a play. It felt like we were doing these sort of long takes and getting to dive in. For me, it was funny. The biggest thing I remember was shooting in the Catskills, because it was so pretty. And I remember waking up every morning and like shooting with my camera and like shooting sunrise and like going on all these photo adventures and stuff. So I don't have as many memories about the set, unfortunately.
It sounds like it was a fun time.
It was really beautiful. I mean, sometimes you can do that. I mean, there's ways where it's like sometimes the work feels less impactful, but then the film turns out really incredible. I mean, it's never linear. Sometimes you have an incredible experience working on it, and it's a horrible film. And so there's really no way to know how they're going to hit or stick or.
It always feels like you are so natural in your films. I never think of you as someone who acts with a capital A, shooting to the rooftops and the blimp flying overhead. And there's certainly a lot of that style, but you are always so just present and in yourself and your films.
Thank you.
And thank you. It's always interesting though when you're in a film, like we've talked some of them that an auteur has cast you in, and they're very visual films, perhaps. And I'm so curious what it was like working with Nicholas Winding Refn on, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
No, you did great.
On The Neon Demon, which is such a visual movie, but I still feel like you were so true to what you always produce and being so natural, even doing some very natural or unnatural things on screen.
Well, natural for her, but yes.
What was that experience like?
I love Nick Refn. I find him to be so metaphysically collaborative, you know, like he burns sage on set and will play meditative, strange, sometimes crazy industrial electronic music for like 20 minutes while the camera's rolling before we even start talking. I feel like he's the first person that's ever allowed me to get a little messy with my process, in the sense of he really wants you to have an out-of-body experience in a way. And I think that, not that I've resisted that, because I do love that whirling dervish, like you don't know where you are, you're just deeply present. But I've never had a director so physically put you in that environment of really wanting to transcend. Everything was wanting to transcend and push into something different and getting into something deeper and deeper and deeper. And I was super game. I mean, obviously we've worked together, you know, twice now. 3 times, actually. We did a weird little book on tape that never went anywhere.
I will be Googling that later.
Yeah, well, it never went anywhere, so it's not there. Hopefully one day we finish it. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, everyone has their own way of doing it, you know, and so I think as an actor, you know, the best thing you can do is kind of have your own bag of tricks, and then also a deep ability to just open to their process. And I really like his process because he demands 120% from an actor, but also has a very clear vision. And I'd never worked with someone like that, where it's so collaborative and almost freestyle and, you know, spiritual. And yet he's already has the shot. He knows exactly what you want to do. And so it was really cool. He's very hard to figure out, which I think is great.
It's amazing to have heard you talk about all of these things you've done kind of on one end of the camera, but I know in some of your most recent work, you have stepped into the role as executive producer. Last year we had the privilege to have Lorelei as an in-competition film here at the film festival, and then this year, of course, we have Porcupine, and I see you're an executive producer on both. What has that experience been like in marking some more things off that list you wrote?
I feel like a lot of the executive producer stuff with acting is just vanity. It's not. I'm not really out there in the trenches with it, unfortunately. I think why an actor wants to have that title is that you get to be involved in decision-making processes that are very important to the film. But I'm not there 6 months, 6 months prior. I'm not really involved in prep, and I was not doing the trying to get the film sold or distributed as executive producers should do. So I just want to specify that I think when a lot of actors take on producing roles, that it's more of, it's basically allowing an actor to be more part of the consensus of the articulation of the film instead of the brunt work or the soldier work of the film, though some actors 100% are. But as a mom, I'm like, absolutely, I have no time for that. So I am not doing that. Maybe now, I don't know, slowly but surely. But yeah, so I didn't feel like having an executive producer title, and that changed much because I also think that every actor, no matter how small your role is or how big, you have to be head of that department. There is no head of the acting department. There's a head of the wardrobe department. There's a head of the camera department. There is no head of the acting department. And I've always found it so frustrating that people don't teach this, is that you have to not only work on what you're doing, but how it sits in the film, where it sits, with the budget, with the set, with the wardrobe, with the lens, with the lights. You have to kind of invite all of that into the process. And so I think any actor that's aware of that or an interest of that is producing. They're also directing. They're also writing. I mean, that's what you should be doing. You don't have to be titled for it or even paid for it, really. Well, sometimes maybe. But that's my job. Like if I'm not thinking about all of those things prior, inviting them in, weighing them, seeing how to show them how to make the best angle work, how to make this budget work, how to not ask for this so that we can pay for this. Those are all really important parts of what we bring to the screen. So it's just I feel like it's just my job, whether I get titled or not, you know.
So I'm so curious, and I'm sure everyone else is. What's next in your job? What do you have on the horizon? Of course, I know you're working with Zach on a new feature. Do you have anything else you can tell us about that you're stepping into?
I'm writing a short film. I'm writing stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna try to start doing some directing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Every director I've ever worked with, they're like, "You're a director. Why are you not doing it?" I'm like, "Well, I have time, right? I mean, I got all the time in the world." But they've also said, or what I've sort of garnered from them is that you need to learn how to write first, because every director I love is a writer, and that's the entrance in, I think. So I've been slowly but surely developing something, and it just got funded, and we may shoot in the summer. So that's really exciting.
Congratulations. I had the privilege of starting as a shorts programmer with the
sweet.
Sarasota Film Festival, and I hope maybe one day we'll have the privilege of sharing that short here.
Yes, amen. I'd love to bring it. Awesome.
So I'm going to open it up. I think we have a little time. Someone tell me if I'm lying. To the audience, does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask Jena?
I loved your role in Pride and Prejudice as Lydia. I thought you were cast perfectly. So was that you, or did you drum her character up? And then a second question to this is there any possibility they would consider writing a sequel?
Oh, to Pride and Prejudice?
Yes, because there's been many books written, sequels to Pride and Prejudice, and so I just
right.
wondered.
Well, there was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, right? Wasn't there?
There was.
That wasn't a sequel, but that's very similar. I mean, Lydia was on the page, and I just had to bring her to life. But yes, of course, there is an effervescence in every human, and a silliness, and we all have a giggle, and you just have to find it, and that's what she demanded of me, to find that kind of superfluous movement of space. And yeah, I was very honored to get to be a part of a Jane Austen novel, obviously, as an American. I was like, do you guys know that I'm American? I was like, okay, all right, I'll do it. Yeah, and I don't know if there's going to be I feel like, unless Jane wrote it, I feel like maybe there wouldn't be, but you should write one. You should write it. Yeah, amen.
Did you have one up front here?
This is why I saw your darling. No, please.
Oh, well, okay, I'll reiterate.
Darling 5-year-old.
So she said that as a mom and a grandma, she has kids, and they've been given lots of opportunities, but they're just wondering about the experience of education versus allowing more of a creative influence, impassioned space.
The price tag that goes with an education.
Right.
Yes, we need a lot of money, but
Yeah. I don't know, because I was not born in that space. So I was born in a space where I went to public school. I went to a private high school for 1 year, and then I took a GED and graduated when I was 14, and then went to community college. So I could have empowered myself to think in those terms of like getting a doctorate, and in some ways I wish I did, because there's like a third chapter of a teacher that I'm like, I think I should go back to school and be a teacher. But more, no, I don't know. But here's the thing: is you're asking about the creative process, and like Einstein saying, the most important part of learning happens after school. And I think that being creative is too small of a word, because we were built out of, basically monkeys, and our brains that pushed us to become the animals that we are, everything was creative, right? There was no arts. There was no separatism. You saw a forest, and it creatively resembled a fishing rod, shelter, hunting, math, storytelling. All of those elements were in everything that you saw. There was no separatism. There was no science over here and then art over here. That's not how we're wired. And so I do agree with Einstein, I'm sure. Who doesn't? That would be so awkward. I totally disagree. Yeah, creativity it's not taught in schools, but it doesn't have to be taught because it's deeply intrinsically inside of us. So the world is just an opportunity to see it in a different way. And so it's more about, for me, I think, how you language, and learning how to language with my son and giving him as many opportunities, whether he's exploring science over here or this beautiful mess of cardboard over here. It's always just exploration and opportunity, and wherever that lands, it's all creative, you know? I mean, making dinner is creative. Doing brain surgery is creative, you know? There is a creativity that we're doing. It's not by rote. It's not by, like, you know, doing it by numbers. And even by those numbers was created by someone. So I don't know. I feel like we think about that level of creativity or art in such a small way, you know, that it needs its own revolution. Oh, no, you did great. I love this question. I love it. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more.
Have you ever done any stage work or considered doing any stage work, specifically musical theater?
I want to do musicals so much. I was just talking to my son in the bathroom, and he's like, Mama, did you ever do any music in your movies? And I was like, no, but it's a dream. And he's like, why is it your dream? And I was like, well, I haven't done it, so I'm dreaming about it. I did do one Broadway play, Doubt. I was a takeover cast, and then I did an off-Broadway play called, from Eugene O'Neill, called Morning Becomes Electra. And I don't know, it could happen again. It would be fun, but it's a hard thing to find, I guess. Thank you.
And I believe that our president, Mark, is going to be coming up and joining us at the front here. I know he has some closing words to share.
Sweet. Howdy.
Hello.
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
Do you want to sit?
No,
You have a seat here.
You sit.
No, well, how about we all stand?
No. Sit here. We have this
All right, you're going to stand
choreographed.
there?
You have
Okay,
to sit
all
there.
right, I understand.
And when I
It's all
say-
very thought out.
No, when I say lo-di-da, you go dee-dee-da.
Oh, okay, it's the
Ready?
musical
One,
number.
2, 3. Okay. No, they told me that I was supposed to thank you for being here.
Oh,
And
don't ever start with supposed to a thank you. That's not gratitude, honey.
no, I don't go by script often.
Oh, great.
Nah, sometimes not. But I do want to share a story about Jena that she probably doesn't even recognize happened. But back when The Messenger was playing here, I loved Oren. He was great, and his wife, and his son, actually, brought a son. And I think, was that with Woody Harrelson and Foster?
Ben Foster, yeah.
Yeah, chugging whiskey at the Cabana Inn. That's what I remember.
Sounds appropriate.
But for you, I remember very explicitly having Hollywood nights with the children in the parking lot. You don't remember this. The parking lot of Whole Foods. And we had 700 children, grandparents, and parents there. And it was the first floor of the parking garage. And we had that big screen in there. We were showing all this stuff. And afterwards, I'm like, well, where's this Malone girl? Where is she? And you were posing with the children. And you were there, and we couldn't get you out of there because you were crunched down and taking pictures with these kids. And I just was so impressed. I remember it. And we were actually reminiscing.
It was the shorts program with the kids. I totally remember that. It was so
Do you
fun.
really? GED at 14. Okay, so.
It's not impressive. Trust me. Anyone could take that test.
Well, but I remember it so vividly. And it went on, and I actually stood behind a piling in the parking garage, and I'm just like, this girl's amazing. This is really something. You were so good with kids. And I was so impressed by it. And you're part of the reason why, a little plug here, the Sarasota Film Festival has been delivering films for this community that for the last decade or more really have been primarily by female women directors, writers, producers, and over 50%. And we've been doing that for years. And I've said this before, that we didn't go out and try to find equality. They were just better. And, I want you to know that you had an impact on that, You're very welcome. You're very welcome, and thanks for being back again. Now I have to give you this weapon. It really is a weapon. What were they thinking? To Odie's mom, the Excellence in Acting Award. Thank you so much. And he's clapping. All right. No, it's okay.
It was really sweet.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Jena. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being here. We have wonderful films playing over at the Municipal Auditorium the rest of the day, so please check them out, and that's going through next Sunday. Thank you all.
Thank you.